up, you guys?
Hi.
We missed you.
We're back.
Sophia, what are you reading?
Now?
What have you been reading?
What have I been reading?
Yes.
April has been a weird month for me because, as y'all know, I'm really a fantasy girl. And, like, very much, like, cozy fantasy, yes, but also, like, what I would describe as, like, fantasy that's not in our world, right? And I've been reading a lot of literary fiction and, like, cozy fantasy. And I'm needing to break it up, I think, with some like high fantasy. So everything I've read has been good. I read Carrie Soto is Back. I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which, guys, reminder that we've been doing book club. I read our personal book club book called The Lost Bookshop that had a little bit of like magical realism in it.
Yep.
I read a couple arcs, which was good, but like magical realism. I don't know. I just like, it's been an interesting, like not a typical reading month for me.
Okay.
But it's been good.
Good.
You know, mixing up genres.
Yeah.
I also read Funny Story by Emily Henry. Oh my gosh, you guys. Emily Henry is the queen.
I know. We love her.
Oh my goodness.
We love her so much.
What about you, dude?
Well, you know, lately I've just been really busy, so I haven't had time to just like sit down and read a book, so I've been like trying audiobooks, and I'm like, wait, I actually am enjoying just like walking around doing things and like listening to a book. And last month in April I listened to almost 4 audiobooks in a row. I was like, this is not bad. But right now it's May by the time you're listening to this, and it is AAPI month, Asian American Pacific Islander month. And we thought this episode would be really fun because we want to recommend some authors and just like kind of talk about different AAPI authors that might not be on your radar, some that are on our radar, and just like it's important to read other points of view and just like getting different perspectives of the world. So like I was gonna say really quick, do we want to, for our listeners especially, talk about our heritage? So I will just preface, I am very much like European American. Yes. And my like 11th great grandfather came over like after the Mayflower. Oh. So like I think that's there's cool. Like it's pretty cool. But like there's like I think a background of like Swedish and Norwegian and English. Okay. But basically we've been here in the United States for like since the Mayflower. So I'm just very, very white, like white American. So, you know, that's cool.
me.
That's cool.
That's me.
That's awesome. I am Filipino American. So my mom is from the Philippines. My dad is first generation Filipino. And so that means on his side, I'm second generation, and I'm first generation on my mom's side. My mom is from Bacolod, which is an island of the Philippines, because there's like a trillion islands in the Philippines, and this one is it's Ilocos, but the town is Bacolod, so like everybody speaks Tagalog in all of the Philippines, but my family speaks Ilonggo, which sounds different. It's so in the Filipino language is really interesting because we're borrowing from some Chinese, some Spanish. Wow. Because the Spaniards took over. King Philip. That's why it's called the Philippines. Anywho,
I didn't actually know that.
Isn't that so weird?
I knew that the Spaniards like took over, but I didn't realize.
Right. Well, that's why a lot of Filipinos have like Spanish sounding names, like De Guzman or Garcia. Isn't that so out? It's love that. Love colonialism. So I'm Filipino, and that's kind of where we're gonna start.
I know. I feel like we haven't necessarily ever talked. You've mentioned being Filipino before, but I feel like as a good just like backdrop to this episode.
Sophia, you need to share your experience.
So too. I did. While I am very white, I am also very grateful that I grew up in a pretty diverse community, even though it was like the suburbs, you know, which I feel like very stereotypically is just like white communities when you just like think of the suburbs, you know. But the church that I grew up in had a very large Filipino community, which was so fun. And like cool. I still have a lot of friends like that I'm in contact with from like growing up. And basically what happened was that there was a church a Filipino church that met in the building, like physically in
Okay, cool.
the church building. And this was when I was like a really young kid, I guess. And I think maybe when I was like 8 or 9, maybe around that age, they were just like, why are we just not a part of this church?
Aww.
And so they just kind of merged. And so
I love it.
Basically, like, a lot of my home church is a big, like, I just so many Filipino people, and it's been amazing. And so I always grew up, like, you know, there was one of the pastor of the Filipino church who, you know, became a pastor at just in general at the church. He's one of the best guys you'll ever meet. Like, every Sunday, he just was like so happy, so charismatic.
Aww.
Like, and then I had these friends that I just grew up with, and so whenever there were like potlucks, I got to eat the most amazing food.
Yes, correct.
Oh my gosh, and I
Correct.
miss Filipino food, and so Kaitlin is going to teach me how to make some really good food. I'm very excited.
Yes.
So anyways, but yeah, it's funny because when we met, I was like, oh, I know a lot of Filipino people, and you were like, what?
I was shocked. It's so funny because
Yeah.
like a lot of my white girlfriends love pancit, and if you have not had it, it's Filipino noodles. Very different than like chow mein or lo mein.
Yeah.
It just like we use different kinds of noodles and different stuff in it. Guys, it's
so
amazing. It's
good.
amazing. So if you know me, I would love to make you guys some pancit. I love it. Yeah, food is such an important part of Asian culture in general. And I feel like that's like part of me too. Like when I have people over, I'm like, did you eat? What, are you hungry?
Yeah.
Like it's just,
I always come over and she's like, you need coffee?
you
I'm
want
like,
some coffee?
Yes.
You hungry?
Yes,
It's just
yes.
part of me. So anyway, let's jump in. We're first going to talk about authors that we have read and then authors that are on our radar to read, because as time goes by, just in like the book publishing world, a lot of authors of color are just like surfacing, a lot of them, which yay, amen. So let's chat about it. Sophia, give me a book that you've read by an AAPI author.
I was kind of telling you this earlier. I was going through the books that I've read, and I was like, okay, I've actually read a decent amount. Like,
That's
not a
good.
ton, but I'm very kind of, which it was like, it's great when it's like not necessarily on purpose.
Right.
You know, it's just like, these are just books I wanted to read, and they happen to be Asian American authors. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So the authors that I've read are Olive Blake. And that is, by the way, that is her pen name. Which is very interesting. And she also writes other books under her real name, which I think is really cool.
Can I say what her
Yes.
real name is?
Yeah, I didn't write it down.
Alexine Farrell Falmouth. She's half Filipino, guys.
Yay!
Grew up in the Bay. All right.
And so it's cool because she writes books under her pen name and her real name. And so I've only read books though under her Olive Blake name. And then I've read a book by Roshani Chosky. I've read some of R.F. Kuang's books. I've read some Marie Lu. She wrote the Legend series, which is like a dystopian YA. Kind of think like in the realm of like Hunger Games, like and just like Divergent. So she is one of those like authors. And then I've read, and I've talked a lot about this author, this next one, which is Sabaa Tahir. She wrote one of my favorite books, An Ember in the Ashes. And what's so cool is that I feel like all of these authors, like I said, I kind of just wanted to read their books. And there's something really cool, and that's what's great about publishing right now, is that a lot of authors... Oh, I've also read Chloe Gong.
Oh, yes.
These Violent Delights. And so it's just cool that a lot of authors are surfacing that, you know, you just want to read their books because they're good books.
Yes.
And that's so amazing.
Yes.
So anyways, those are who I've read. We'll get into later about the ones that I really want to read, which is a much more expansive list.
Me too.
But, you know.
Yeah, it was actually, I'm not going to lie, guys, it's kind of sad. I was going through my Goodreads. I was looking at my shelf. I don't have a lot of AAPI authors. And like, even growing up, it was not easily accessible for me to find Asian American authors, period. I mean, like, you know, we had Joy Luck Club that I read in like middle school, you know, and like that was pretty much it. And then there was a lot of like children's books, but like now in 2024, I'm like, who's Olive Blake? And she's half Filipino. I'm like, that's really cool. So I've read a few. And so I have a lot also on my want to read. But you guys have probably seen this in the 24-hour readathon. I read and finished Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manasala. And it's so cool because her books are all different foods.
I love
like
that.
It's so funny. So we have like Arsenic and Adobo and like bibingka and something else. Bibingka is it's a Filipino dessert. it's just really funny, and it's like cozy mystery. I enjoyed it. And then I've read Jenny Han, and it's funny to me because I think Jenny Han made a huge splash, just like saying, "Hey, I'm an Asian American author. I've written romance books," because of To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
Yes.
It went on Netflix, didn't know who she was. And I was like,
right.
Oh, this is a book? That's so cool. And then I loved The Summer I Turned Pretty. I love the end because season 3 is not out yet, but I sped through the end and I was like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. I enjoyed it. If you have not read Jenny Han, read it. It's fun. It's just fun. Yeah. Okay, Sophia, let's do some. Yeah.
No, I'm not trying to call you out.
No, that's so sad, right? That's literally it.
It's
That's
okay.
sad.
It's
It's
okay.
so
It's okay.
sad.
It's okay. This is why we're talking about this.
But don't worry, guys. Soon I will be on the AAPI author list that you need to read.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yep, that's
oh my
gonna
gosh.
happen.
And I'm trying to get her to let me read excerpts of her book. I'm trying.
We're trying.
We're trying. I'm begging. I'm always trying to pull that out of her.
I have not even finished my first draft yet, but I plan to finish it next month. So maybe you can be
What is that?
an ARC reader after I get my first edit done. So
amazing.
There we go.
I would love to read a lot more fantasy by AAPI authors.
Yeah, me too.
And I think a reason why is because a lot of fantasy that is out there is very like inspired by Western culture. If you think back to like just in general, like the kind of fantasy that you see on the shelves is like Game of Thrones. That's very inspired by like the medieval times era, like
That's true.
royalty, like the War of the Roses. I'm pretty sure like Game of Thrones is inspired by.
Okay.
All of the so, you have a lot of high fantasy that is inspired by just Western culture, maybe the European like culture. And a lot of fantasy that I want to read has backgrounds set in other, maybe they're made up worlds, right? But they're inspired by like Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Filipino culture.
Yes.
And I think that's
cool.
I really want to get into that. And something, like I said with Sabaa Tahir's books, is that it's set almost in like a Middle Eastern, kind of Arabian, Indian, like very like different world of fantasy. And so I really want to read more.
I love that.
Fantasy set in other, even though it's made up worlds, that's what I want to read. And so some of those authors, and I have other ones that are not fantasy authors that I want to read, but some of them in particular, I want to read some Elizabeth Lim books. And something cool about Elizabeth Lim is that she wrote quite a few of the Twisted Tales for Disney.
She did?
Yes. So,
oh my gosh, that's how I know her name. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
cool.
a lot of those, I don't know if you guys, have ever been in like a Barnes & Noble where you're walking through the YA section and there's like a whole bunch of like Disney-fied books. The what if kind of books. And she wrote quite a few of those.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, I really want to read
maybe
those.
She wrote the Mulan one, maybe?
She did, but she also wrote other Twisted Tales, which I just think is so cool. But she also has, I'm pulling up my one to read right now because I don't want to confuse the authors. But yeah, so first of all, I think that's really cool that I think she kind of made her name in that a little bit, which is awesome. But she wrote a book that I really want to read, which is called 6 Crimson Cranes. And it is, I believe, a duology, perhaps a trilogy. And again, it just seems to be like a high fantasy, there's a princess, there's a, really intricate magic system. It says weaving the elements of the Wild Swan, Cinderella, the Legend of Shang-Yi, and the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. Like, so very inspired by like other fairy tales.
Yes.
And y'all know that I love retellings.
I
like,
do, yeah.
I think that would be amazing to read. And so she is, first of all, an author that I really want to get into. I'll toss it back to you. We can go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah. Y'all have probably also heard of this author, Celeste Ng. She wrote Little Fires Everywhere. I watched the show, and it's really interesting because she's Asian American, but she wrote about a black and white family. And I think that is also very interesting. Just perspective on everything. I love the show. If you have not seen it, you guys have to watch it. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my gosh, Sophia, you would love it.
I remember when it came out. I remember the hype around it.
Oh, it's amazing.
When it came out.
I just really want to read that really bad. Because I'm like, That's very interesting to me that it wasn't a white author or a black author, but it was an Asian American author. So that's really cool.
She has a lot of other books out though that I feel like
she does.
You know,
She
so
does.
I actually what's the book that I own by her that was given to me as a gift? Oh God.
Last thing.
Something like that.
Yep,
But
yep, yep.
again, so she's written a lot of books,
stuff.
and I want to get into her also as an author. A book that I was just telling Kaitlin about, which is a standalone high fantasy, is called The Sword of Kagan. And what's crazy about this book is that I had no idea that it was by an Asian American female author.
Yes.
Because I see this book lumped into recommendations when it pops up on like my For You page, right? It's lumped in with Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, George R.R. Martin, like all of these like old white authors. Well, Brandon Sanderson's not old, but like with like white male authors. Not saying that they can't write amazing books, but like I see this book lumped in with these recommendations of high fantasy. And so I looked it up, and it's a standalone by I believe she's fairly young. Her pen name is M.L. Wong, and I cannot for the life of me find what her real name is. And I would love to know. I've been looking it up. It seems very hidden. Maybe it's somewhere deep in like a biography or whatever. But yeah, she wrote this high fantasy that people literally say will like destroy you.
Oh,
which means I want to read it. Obviously. So that's what I love about that is that I think like I love that it's just being recommended without any like pretense, I guess maybe is the right word.
I'm literally adding her to my
like
that's awesome.
It's just kind of this is a really, really good high fantasy. You should read it. It does not matter who the author was. Like it's just a really, really good book. And so how cool is it that it's written by this like younger Asian American author?
Wow.
And she's being recommended right alongside these kind of fantasy icons.
Yeah. I mean,
so
it says here that she has self-published 5 books. For her to be self-published and to be grouped with these. Yeah. Incredible. That's really cool.
Yeah. Like I'll see her alongside. Awesome. I saw recommendations that was like, you should read The Way of Kings and The Sword of Kagan. And I was like,
wow.
Whoa. So really, I really, really, really want to get to that. And then I will also say really quickly some other like fantasy authors that I want to read. There's this author named Axie O, and she wrote this fantasy called The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. I love the idea of the magic system that is like in the premise of this book. I really want to read Iron Widow, which is by Zhiran J. Zhao. And this is, I think, a duology.
Okay.
And
we love duologies over
I know,
here, guys.
we love duology. I could be wrong, but it's it seems almost like Black Widow vibes, which I think is really cool. Like I think I don't know if she's an assassin, but she's like very much like she's a strong, like she might be an assassin, but like she's definitely, I think like there's like morally gray character.
Oh, very cool.
And like, very interesting, again, like magic system. So as y'all can tell, like I really want to read more fantasy. Anyways, I'm very excited about some of these authors getting into their books.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's like the rom-coms that I want to read. But,
know,
what else are you kind of interested in?
Yeah, I love those. I think for me, sometimes when I want an Asian American author, I see a lot of nonfiction or like, let me tell you, or a fiction, but it's like, about this Asian American struggling in America. And I love those, and if you guys know some of those, please let me know, because I would like to read a really good one. But sometimes I just want like a funny cultural book. And I feel like, so Jessie Q Sutanto, she wrote Dial A for Aunties, Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. It's just fun and funny, and like I think in Dial A for Aunties, this girl is like kind of caught up in like a murder mystery, and these like Asian aunties come and help. Like, come on, I'm like dying. That's so cute. But like, yeah, this author wrote some fun stuff. She also wrote like some thrillers and some YA stuff too. I'm like, okay, well, I love that. That's just fun and entertaining. Another kind of like YA but kind of darker is Rin. Hold on, let me say your name. Rin Chupeco. She's Filipino, but she writes YA thrillers, and she's also known for The Bone Witch, which is like a horror thriller. And like, I don't know if I want to read that necessarily, only because I might get scared. There's literally no other reason. But like, she's a Filipino author, and what I always love to do is like, I want to buy a Filipino author to just have it on my shelf because I do not see a lot of them. Yeah. So I do want to read Olive Blake. I really, really want to read
the Atlas 6. Yeah.
Atlas 6. Yeah. You read it, right?
I did, and I've also read One for My Enemy, which was a Romeo and Juliet retelling. Okay. Which was really, really cool.
Which one would you recommend me read first?
Well, One for My Enemy is a standalone. So that helps. Maybe I'll try that. If you're just looking for a standalone. There is now a second and third book in the Atlas 6 series, and I don't know if it's done. Oh. Yeah. The third one just came out recently. It came out, I think, in like maybe February. Yeah. And so there's more books of that. But she also has other books that I believe are standalones. There's one called Masters of Death, which I'm interested in. I've heard of that one. The cover is really cool. It's like a green cover. But all I've read from her is One for My Enemy and the Atlas 6. Okay. And I really enjoyed both. I will say I think that One for My Enemy, again, I just love a good retelling. Yeah. So I think I like that one maybe a little bit more. That's fun. But she has a very gorgeous writing style that even if the story is losing you a little bit, you're just like, oh, that's just so beautiful. Like, just she really brings out like but it's not like cheesy descriptions. Okay. It's not like you're reading it and you're like, oh, she's going too far. Like, she's clearly trying too hard. It's like, no, this just feels like her natural writing style. Yeah. Which I really love. I think like if you guys are looking for maybe if you want to read Olive Blake, maybe start with the Atlas 6 just because it's her most popular work. Okay. But if you want to try something different, I would recommend One for My Enemy. Okay. So there you go. I also think that when it comes to, I think I mentioned that I've read some R.F. Kuang, some of her books. Yes. What I've read so far was Babel, and I started a little bit of the Poppy War. I put it down for now because I really want to read the whole trilogy in a row. Like, I think that I want to just have the 3 books ready to go. Again, I hear it's going to destroy me. So I'm kind of like, let me just prepare myself to get into a trilogy. So it was kind of like I picked it up and I read like the first couple chapters and I was like, you know what? I need to put it down. I need to get to some other books on my TBR and then I will get back into this. Right. Because I just plan on picking it up and reading all 3 and just going on that journey. Yeah, that's cool. But I also really want to read Yellowface. Yes. Which is, you can talk a little bit about that book. Because yeah, guys. I feel like you know more about the premise I got Yellowface for my birthday and I really, really want to read it in this coming month. But basically it's about this Asian American author. I'm not spoiling anything. This is on the back. She dies right at the beginning, and her coworker, who's a white woman, finds her manuscript of a book. So she's an author, wrote a book, didn't finish it. White woman takes it, and she like lives her life. It is every person of color's absolute nightmare for that to happen. Absolute nightmare. But like, it is about books. It's about being an author, and it's technically a thriller, kind of. Like, people won't say that, but like, as it progresses, you just start getting anxious, you know? And I'm like, man, this would be a great movie, but I've not read it yet. And R.F. Kuang also wrote Babel. Yes. It's also on my shelf. I got it for my birthday. I'm really excited to read it, but I know that's going to take a lot of brain power for me to like just sit and finish it. So I'm gonna try the Yellowface and then go into Babel. So I'm excited. I think also R.F. Kuang is I'm so excited for her next book to come out. They just announced it recently, but with like no premise. They just like announced what is her next title book? Do you know? Let me look it up because I don't quite remember, but from what I saw, it was just like, here's the title, she's writing a new book, and there was just no like description. I'm sure maybe by the time this episode comes out, maybe we'll have some sort of Catabasis? Yeah, Catabasis. That's all I know. What is it even? It just has like signed academic rivals. Here's what it says. Catabasis, noun, ancient Greek. The story of a hero's descent to the underworld.
2 academic rivals from Cambridge must travel to hell to rescue the soul of their advisor. What? Getting there was easy. Surviving it and each other is another thing entirely. 2025's most unexpected love story is going to be hell in the new novel. What?
So that's new, because I had seen literally just an announcement on like TikTok.
Okay.
Which was really, so that's good to know that there's a bit of a premise.
Yes.
As abstract as that is. But I would love to get through the Poppy War, I think, and Yellowface before that comes out. So I would love to like read her whole backlist.
Yes.
But yeah, I just think I loved Babel. I agree that I think it took a lot of brain power.
Okay.
It was also funny because I read it when I was kind of sick. Like I read it summer of 2023. And it was like, there was a week that I was just not feeling 100%. Like, I wasn't really sick, but you know those weeks where you're just like, I'm not feeling totally there. And I read it during that week. Oh. And I really enjoyed it, but it definitely, I was like, my brain hurts sometimes, you know? And I was like,
I get that.
But I really liked it. And I still remember quite a lot of the plot, which is always a good sign.
Right.
You know, when almost a year later you can remember the plot of a book. That's
good.
Yeah. But I also, it's one of those where I would highly recommend it, but it's also a little bit more in depth. A little more brain power.
Yeah. You know what I really do love about Asian culture in general is like there is a lot of lore that people don't like talk about. So like it is really, you know, we're talking about oh gosh, Throne of Crowns, Game of Thrones, Lord, oh my God. Game of Thrones, you said it was like,
I think it's like, inspired kind of by the War of the Roses. So like the Elizabeth Tudor era.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
really interesting because, you know, the more that you think about like something like a Studio Ghibli
oh my gosh.
movie,
I love those.
Have you seen Spirited Away?
Yes.
Okay, so the dragon stuff and
I had a class where we studied Spirited Away because it was a music as narrative class.
I love the music. It's incredible.
First of all, the music is incredible. But Miyazaki music is just some of the best reading music, actually, by the way. Like, put on just a Miyazaki playlist.
There you go.
For the reading vibes.
Happy
That's
AAPI
what I'm
month.
going to be doing all AAPI.
That'll be so fun.
Let's be honest. This entire May, my reading playlist.
We're going to share. We should make a playlist and then share it with everybody.
We're going to do that.
We got it.
We're going to make you guys a reading playlist. But anyways, I love his music, but we did the Spirited Away just actually to not even study the music, even though it was a music class, but the idea of narrative.
I love it.
And it was so good to like walk through that film and really like see the connections, talking about the myths, talking about everything. So it's amazing. If you guys have not seen Spirited Away, you really, really, really should.
Yeah.
And kind of look at it almost from like, not like, oh, I'm just enjoying this film. Like there's a lot of depth.
It's incredible.
It's a brilliant, brilliant movie.
Now that we're on this really quick, have you guys heard about the Moss theory? I saw this on Tumblr a while ago. Tumblr, not. That's how old I am. Okay, so you know at the beginning, Chihiro and her parents go through that cave, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. There's no moss on it. When they come out of it, there's moss covering the car, covering everything. Okay. Moss takes a lot of time to grow. Right. Like 20 plus years to just start to really show up. And so they're thinking that they've been gone for like 20 plus years.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And so it's only at the very ending scene.
Whoa.
I know. It's pretty crazy. Anyway,
the storytelling is incredible. Notes. I want to go back to my notes now of like all that I took about that movie.
Oh, I want to know.
I'll have to find them. Anyways.
But I'm saying that like Asian culture, lore, and legends are like really packed with a lot of things, like the reincarnation stuff, the dragons, the spirits. I mean, it's really cool. And I love that Asian American fantasy writers are really leaning into that. And honestly, like as I'm writing my fantasy stuff, like my husband was like, why don't you like incorporate some like Filipino stuff in there? And like sometimes I go there, sometimes I don't, sometimes it works. But like those authors like the who's the first one you were talking about?
Elizabeth Lim.
Yes, Elizabeth Lim. I mean, like, that's very specific.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
also makes her stuff stand out, which I'm like, yeah, we probably should also try those stories out. So I'm excited for, like, this TBR list of AAPI authors. That's so cool.
I really am very much, like, just focused on reading authors this month that... Yeah, like I said, I think I want to do a lot of fantasy. Like every book that I mentioned that's in that fantasy genre, like I really want to read. But I also want to read Yellowface, which is like literary fiction thriller. Maybe I should throw in a rom-com in there. Yeah. You know, maybe like, you know, I think, and you made a really good point about reading books that are people's experiences, whether that's they're a real story or just commentary on it. Like I think there's a book called Crying in H Mart.
Yes, Crying in H Mart.
And I think that's kind of, I think it's fiction, but I think it's a lot of commentary on
Michelle Zimmer.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot, and a lot of people recommend it, and they say it's like, but I think it's more that kind of book where it's fiction, but really it's commentary on the Asian American experience.
Yes.
And I think those books are really important to read. But y'all know our reading taste, and you know that we just like to be entertained. And so sometimes turning our brain off from, like, at least for me, I'll speak for myself here, sometimes I don't want to read, like, really deep things that'll make me think so hard about, like, real world commentary. Like, sometimes I just want to read a fantasy, a rom-com.
Yes.
And so that's why a lot of my TBR this month, I think, is focused on Asian American and Pacific Islander authors, but the genres that I like to read.
Yes, absolutely.
You know?
And they're available for us. You know what I'm saying? It's not like... me trying to find like a biography only of an Asian American author, but like young people are starting to write in the genre that we want, and it's like and it's pretty good. Yeah. So this is a good episode. I hope that you guys put some stuff on your TBR. We will keep you guys updated on what we're going to read for our book club this coming month. So if you have not joined Fable, it's a free app. We're on there. You can check it out in our bio on Instagram or TikTok. And happy AAPI month. Yeah, support.
Let us know what you guys are reading.
Yeah,
you know,
we're excited. We hope you got some good recs in this episode. And we will keep you updated.
We will. We'll let you know
how it goes.
All the fun things.
I know.
But happy start of May
and
AAPI month.
Yay!
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.